so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take about a minute and a half to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm sincerely passionate about promoting is Purium. It's no mystery that bringing your mind, body, and spirit into balance is necessary if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and grandest version of themselves. So if you've been looking for a way to easily get organic superfoods into your system every day with a simple plan that can help you reestablish a healthier foundation and relationship with food, like I was doing before I found Purium, I highly recommend going to positivehead.com/transformation and checking out the videos and interviews there where I dive deeply into discussions explaining why I take these products every day. And should you ultimately end up on iShopPurium.com to purchase any of their 50 plus amazing superfood products, be sure to use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for a 25% discount. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have the dynamic duo, Dr. Eric Pearl and Jillian Fleer, here with me on the show. Eric is the creator of the energy healing technique he calls reconnective healing and author of the best-selling book, The Reconnection. Jillian is the visionary leader that has helped Eric spread reconnective healing to over 100 countries and millions of people around the globe. Hey there, Eric and Jillian. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having us on board with you.
Hi, Brandon.
Hello. It's so great to have two of you. It's like saying you're the favorite Brandon Beecham. Actually, there is another Brandon Beecham. There's more than one. Oh, well, you're my favorite Jillian Fleer, so that works out just perfectly. And I'm really, really excited to connect with you guys. And you know, we got connected just very recently through our mutual friend Christopher David Jackson, who is a regular co-host, one of my best friends and regular co-host here on the show. So I know this is going to be good. Anything he sends my way is always amazing. So I'm going to start with the same question I always start with. And I'm going to actually ask it to both of you, let you answer separately. And the question is this. You're in an elevator. The woman looks over to you, next to you, looks over to you, says, what's your passion? And you have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Eric, you got to start with this one. My passionate partner.
What's my passion? My passion is to bring a new level of healing and evolution onto this planet in such an awareness that it reverberates throughout time and throughout all dimensions.
I love that answer.
That's really fortunate, since that's what we spend our entire life doing. I'm very excited about that passion.
You second it. You second that passion, huh?
I do. And, I'll tell you, I'm extremely passionate about the evolutionary explosion that humanity is undergoing right now. It is, it's a spectacular time to be curious. It's a interesting time to question and check in on one's personal accountability. And, I think for me, I'm passionate to go out there into the world and share pretty phenomenal intelligence and a very special, what I refer to as a romantic language, which is the energy, light, and information of this intelligence in this reconnective healing approach each and every day. It is a new level of healing and life progress, really, that is available to every sentient human being without any caveats. It requires nothing added. It requires nothing special or to create a specialness in any way, shape, or form in the ego, or even in one's kind of, quest to be the best. It just seems to be this beautiful intelligence that's come onto this planet to teach us how to receive in a word. It is that at its very core. So I am passionate about humanity learning the deepest level of receiving and receivership.
Well, I hope that woman was very fascinated because she missed her floor.
I was about to say, that is the what I call the Willy Wonka elevator answer, where they blast into outer space, and I love those sort of answers. So because it was so poetic and beautifully said, we're going to let you slide on that one, Jillian.
Okay.
Now, I do want to mention, Brandon, that the answer I gave you was fitting the way you phrased the question. In reality, what I would probably do is I would say to that woman, you know what? Hold your hand out for a moment. And I'd have her open her fingers and hold her hand there. And I would allow her to begin to feel what science today calls the reconnective healing frequencies, the energy, light, and information that is the language of this healing. And as she began to feel it, most likely, like pretty much everyone, her fingers would go into an involuntary movement. And I would say, do you see that? She'd say, yes. And I'd say, are you moving your fingers, or are your fingers moving themselves? And she would most likely say that her fingers were moving themselves. And then I would say, okay, this is what I do. Now let me explain to you.
Wow. Well, I look forward to diving deep down that rabbit hole. Before we do, I'd love to get a little bit of backstory. I know Chris shared a little bit of backstory with me, and it's, I'm a sucker for good stories, and it sounds like yours is definitely an amazing one. So I'd love to hear, how this all began, what led up to it, how you guys got together, how the dynamic duo got together here. And so please share.
Well, my backstory, how this began.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're ready, eventually,
I'm more than ready. Born ready.
I was practicing as a chiropractor, where somewhere in my 12th year of practice, a few strange things happened. I woke up one night because a bright light came bursting through my eyes, and I opened my eyes to see what it was, and it wasn't anything seemingly spiritual or metaphysical. It was just the lamp next to my bed. For some reason, it had managed to turn itself on. And
Wow.
the next thing I noticed was my door, which I had always closed before I went to sleep. My bedroom door was wide open. And it felt as if somebody was in my house. So I got up cautiously. I grabbed the largest knife I could find, an emptied old can of pepper spray to make me look intimidating, and my Doberman Pinscher, who was a little more nervous than I was. And we went searching through the house. We couldn't find anyone. And after about 20 minutes, I told myself it had to be my imagination. So I went back to bed. I went to turn off the light, and that little brown button that was on the lamp that you click on and you click off, rotating it. Well, I'm a clicker. Everything's clicked into place, and toothpaste caps are screwed on, and doors are locked, and windows are shut. The lamp was not rotated or clicked into an on position. It had just rotated enough to ignite that bulb. And I remember thinking, well, this certainly was not me who did this, but I'm going to sleep. And if they let me wake up in the morning, they do. But I have to go in and see my patients the next day. So I went in to see my patients. And that next day, as I would hold my hands near them, I would notice that they started demonstrating strange muscular movements. Their fingers would move up and down, their feet would twitch, their legs would jump, their eyes would dart back and forth. When they opened their eyes, they told me that they sensed someone in the room with us, pretty much just as I had been sensing someone in my house over that weekend. They told me that they were seeing colors when their eyes were closed that they had never seen. That as their eyes were darting back and forth, not only were they seeing colors, they were smelling flowers they had never smelled before.
Wow.
When they got up, they were reporting and demonstrating various kinds of healings. They were people who were colorblind were seeing colors. Kids who had epilepsy or cerebral palsy were walking and running and playing normally. I was getting calls later in the week from their parents saying they weren't requiring their medications. They weren't having seizures any longer. Their doctors would call, ask me what I had done. I said I didn't do anything and don't tell anybody. And of course, the more I said that, the more everyone started asking to find out what was happening. Soon, media started calling and researchers came about. And as we got involved in some of the studies, the scientists began to see that or say that what I was doing at that point, before I even began to teach anyone else how to do the same thing, was accessing aspects of light and information into this field that they had not seen before. And we were playing with that and doing some of the research, and people started asking me to teach this. And I said, teach it. You got to be crazy. I'm standing there waving my hands in the air, looking like an idiot. So go outside, do the same thing. Let me know what your neighbors say about you. But more and more, as I began to let people feel this work, I discovered that I was able to show them how to do it. And at this point in time, Jillian and I have trained close to 100,000 people around the world how to do reconnective healing. Now, we've trained them at various levels because as I was accessing my own insight and information, as we were learning to teach it better and better, the people that are learning how to do this now are very much advanced in this work. But we have a book out called The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. It's in 40-some languages around the globe. And then I used to be relatively normal.
Well, I think it's also kind of a little fair. Let's just say fair. We're going to be a little additionally transparent here because it's the 25th anniversary of when this, what we refer to as one very strange night occurred. But in some kind of reality and synchronicity.
It was an interesting time in my life when this was going on. I mean, it really was. At the time of this anomaly, there was a strange intersection, you could say, that was occurring. I had ended a 6-year relationship that I thought would be the relationship of my life. as I was functioning as a chiropractor, you would adjust your patients on the table. I would walk around the table. I had difficulty actually putting one foot in front of the other just to walk. So my mind was not my mind.
What do you mean you had trouble walking? Now, first, just a couple clarifying questions. So you were showing up that next morning to your patients, but in a chiropractic capacity, right? You weren't doing any sort of energy healing when this started to transpire. And then my second question is, what exactly do you mean about not being able to walk?
Okay. So what I mean is I was so emotionally shaken by the end of that relationship that my own thoughts inside of me weren't really allowing me to feel very present even within my own body. So even walking was something that took conscious effort. Yes, and you're right. I did go into the office to do chiropractic. That was what I had done. But as I was holding my hands near my patients, they were telling me that they could feel where my hands were before I touched them. After I finished adjusting them and I had them lie there with their eyes closed to relax and let their adjustment settle in, was when I held my hands near them and I saw their bodies going into these movements, for example, that I described, or their eyes rapidly darting back and forth. And when they opened their eyes, it seemed that patient after patient was telling me that they were sensing that someone was in the room with us, or someone had walked into the room while they were lying there with their eyes closed. And it seemed that no matter how many times I told them that no one walked into the room with us, no one really seemed to believe me.
I think additionally, what was, I think, interesting as well is Eric didn't have a background in energy healing techniques. He didn't come from a healing background, although learning chiropractic at the time and in the way that he became part of the chiropractic process certainly had an intuitive philosophy behind it. And the philosophy, I think, for him, and maybe what ultimately became a really interesting crack in the door for this anomaly event was, basically, we are part of a system of intelligence, and what created the body often is the impetus for what heals the body.
In other words, chiropractic, pure, true chiropractic, what's called philosophic or principled chiropractic, recognizes that there's an intelligence that formed and creates and regulates the universe and all dimensions and all forms of life. It's called a universal intelligence. And within each of us, our version of it is inside of us. So it's referred to as an innate intelligence. And what pure or straight chiropractors do is they simply look for an interference in the spine where the nervous system from the brain is transmitted throughout the spine for feedback and communication. And they remove that interference, get out of the way, and allow the power that made the body to heal the body. True chiropractors don't look at symptoms. They don't look to see whether you're sleeping well or whether you're having pain or whether you're digesting or whether your knee hurts. They just look for an interference, remove it, and get out of the way. And so as I was more and more living in that purity of the chiropractic principles and philosophy, was this same time that these healings, then that one strange night happened and they began to burst through. So in the introduction, when you were so graciously, introducing Jillian and I to your listening audience, you said that I was the creator of reconnective healing. And that's not really accurate. You could say that I discovered it in a sense, but in reality, it would be more true to say that it discovered me. And when we teach reconnective healing, around the world, it doesn't seem to matter the languages or the cultures. The main thing that most people come into our training programs thinking is that they're going to learn how to send energy and send healings And in reality, what we discover is that the highest way to facilitate healings, whether it's for yourself or for others, is to learn to let go of the concept of sending and instead to receive. And in the ultimate state of receivership, we become transformed and we affect not only ourselves, but the field and everyone within it. We become what we term as a catalyst for the healing frequencies of energy, light, and information, what science calls the reconnective healing frequencies today. These frequencies are the language of the healing, and they are, in essence, the conduit through which this intelligence is communicated. We think of ourselves, human beings, stepping into healing as if we're the conduit, as if we're a straw and the healing comes through us. But actually, it's our learning to be in a state of simple presence, of observation, of witnessing, being the observer and the observed ourselves, and actually stepping into that to a greater presence, to becoming actually a witness and the witnessed simultaneously. We become the catalyst that transforms ourselves, transforms the lives of those with whom we interact, and therefore we become a pivotal aspect at yet greater and greater levels of recognizing the transformation that each and every one of us, the role we play in transformation for the universe by being present.
And let me tag that with, that's the reconnective healing approach. And then I guess
well, it's not just the reconnective healing approach. It's how healing at its highest happens. It's just that it's not really taught, or in many cases even understood at that level in a lot of the technique healing approaches. So reconnective healing, if you ask me personally, made its appearance here to be a light for us to move beyond through and out of that tunnel, to let go of technique, to realize that the training wheels of technique on our bicycles of healing have been wonderful ways to learn how to find balance on that bicycle of healing. But the true gift of any training wheel only comes when we remove it. And reconnective healing is here to allow us to remove the training wheels of technique, to transcend technique and find the actual gift that technique brings comes only when we let go of it.
Very, very fascinating.
Yeah, it is a elegantly simple approach that is seemingly difficult because often it is so simplistic in its intelligence, I'm going to say. So, yeah, people often say, what is reconnective healing? And why is it so difficult to grasp at times? And I think we are attracted to complexity and detail. The mind needs evidence. And we like steps and we like memorization and healing trinkets. They intrigue and fascinate us, and they can be very seductive, and often they give the illusion that we are more with them, And yet with reconnective healing, you're stepping into an approach where you, as I mentioned earlier, are already enough. There's not really the art of learning to do something. You are stepping into a beingness through your allowing to receive and be the receiver of this sort of new vibrational reality. And the best way, I think, to understand it at times is, and this is often how we allow the students to really move beyond the mind, because for whatever it's worth, this intelligence bypasses the mind. It doesn't seem to engage where your thoughts are. So therefore it requires no belief system. It really seems to engage at the point of awareness rather than your thinking awareness. And in that, the best opportunity is we'll really just express to the students consider yourself to be a human Bluetooth. When you switch the Bluetooth on your iPhone or your Android or whatever your device is, you become a signal. But it isn't a signal that is being sent. It's a receiver signal that allows you to be pairable with that which is around you. And in the interaction with the reconnective healing intelligence, and as this language becomes more apparent, not because you're learning the language, but because it's unfolding on a biophotonic level, cellularly, biology begins to adapt. We have a ton of research on how the reconnective healing spectrum affects our DNA. And this isn't particularly unusual. There's so much in the conversation of transforming our DNA. We know that this is happening, but this has been happening with the reconnective healing intelligence for the last 25 years. We know that it establishes what we call a thermodynamic field in the training room before we even arrive, before our students even arrive. William Tiller, God bless him, came 6 times to our training program to set up his equipment and record and document the electromagnetic field, or what we refer to as entropy or negative entropy in this case, in our training rooms. And he came 6 times because he thought his equipment was broken. It wasn't able to capture that which would be attributed to equipment. It became evident that something was happening that was coming from a source, not in the measuring equipment. So we know this so deeply, and because it's quite tangible, it doesn't require the imagination. Our students, first and foremost, they explore what it means to be an observer. And in that role as the observer, there is a new level of validation, I'm going to say, because they're able to see something happening. And that can start first with their own relationship in their own self-healing process. They're able to witness a very tangible interaction with the tissue. As Eric mentioned, we often see a lot of involuntary movement, pushing and pulling that's very visible. They experience a quiescence, something master meditators spend lifetimes learning in a matter of moments.
Multiple researchers from the University of Arizona and from St. Petersburg in Russia and others have studied this quiescence and verified and validated that it allows people who learn reconnective healing to access this state fairly immediately, even though, as we said, it may take masters in meditation decades to get near this, and many of them don't.
So the conundrum is, how is this happening if we're not doing it? And that is often where the entry point of our students' fascination starts. And we have a lot of fun. The funnest part is we give them and we present multiple ways for them to test and bust through and kind of stand up to what is real and what isn't real.
We always say, allow the reconnective healing frequencies to stand or fall on their own. Yeah. Don't do anything to help them. They don't need us clearing the aura after the healing. They don't need us balancing the chakras. They don't need us coming in with pyramid hats. They don't need us removing densities or entities in the field. They don't need us to anchoring them in case they go away, because they don't go away. Part of the reason there's so much scientific validation about reconnective healing, what really intrigued the researchers from the very beginning is two unusual aspects of it. One is that the healings tend to happen fairly instantaneously. Even what science has shown is happening outside of time, outside of space. And because they happen outside of the constraints of time and space, people don't usually need to come back for more and more sessions. The healings tend to be, shall we say, owned by the person who receives it. They tend to be theirs for a lifetime, and they continue to expand. Now, it's not that people don't enjoy coming back to be moved to yet another level and another level with reconnective healing, but it doesn't build a dependency. It's not like going to your hairdresser and having to go back every 6 weeks when your roots show. What you gain from this, you gain from this. But as Jillian mentioned earlier, some of the most difficult aspects for newcomers to reconnective healing, even, or I'm not even going to say even, I'm going to say especially if they've been involved in energy healing for a long time, is letting go of the belief system of doing and letting go of the investment in complexity. So what I'd like to do for 1 second is, Jillian and I are working on a new book we hope to get released this year. And I want to give you one little segment on this. And it's called, Why is Simplicity Such a Seemingly Complex Achievement? What makes simplicity so complex? Well, for starters, it's not complex at all. We're simply afraid of what we might have to give up to attain it, of what we might lose, and of what we might discover of ourselves. Yet in reality, we give up little if nothing to gain so much. We lose only that which is illusion. So we have to ask ourselves, what is illusion? And why do we hold on to it so strongly? What makes illusion such a struggle to hold on to is the fact that it is illusion. That is, that it doesn't actually exist. So we are attempting to hold on to something that isn't there, which is not really an easy thing to do. Dare we say it's not really possible to hold on to something that isn't? Do we then try to hold on to an illusion because we're afraid that we are or have become the illusion itself and that people will see us for being just that without something to hide behind? Simplicity is a letting go. Most everything that falls away was never really there in the first place. And most everything that remains is all that ever was. What falls away is the clutter. What remains is the beauty. What falls away is the distraction. What remains is the attraction. What falls away is the external. What remains is the internal. What falls away is the temporary. What remains is the eternal. What falls away is the illusion. What remains is the reality. What falls away is the lie. What remains is the truth. What falls away is a suit of armor. What remains is our heart. We all enjoy a little mystery, a little mystique every once in a while. It's alluring, it's enticing, it's seductive. But if we're not careful, well, too much, and we become a caricature of ourselves, a parody, farce, satire, or distortion, a mimicry, or even a cartoon of ourselves. Ultimately, we become a sham. It's both the most difficult and yet one of the simplest places to return from. Difficult because of our fear of being revealed, and yet simple because all we have to do is let go of what isn't real. In the healing field, it's easy to find ourselves hidden and obscured in indeterminate mystique. It's alluring. The mystique itself makes us feel special and unique, or at least it affords us that appearance. The technique makes us feel masterful and in control. The rituals make us feel as if we're part of someone's group or lineage or tradition. The protections make us feel as if we're playing with something powerfully dangerous, keeping us in a fear-based relationship or whatever it is. And all of this is part of an addictive and seductive cycle, one that gives us short bursts of pleasure that don't sustain themselves because they're based upon the artificial. True healing is its own reward. True healing is its own reward, and to get there, we have to step into our own truth, not necessarily what we desire to be our own truth, not what we obstinately or self-righteously cling to as truth, but the truth that speaks when we ask ourselves what our reality really is, and there is nobody there to listen or hear the answer but us.
That is incredibly powerful. Everything that you've sort of been talking about here reminds me of hearing Bashar. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bashar, talk about this idea of permission slips. That a lot of these tools and techniques and things are really just permission slips that we've given ourselves to sort of access our own power. And, that's why there's something to the idea of ritual or using crystals, or if someone believes that to be the case, then they've given themselves a permission slip to access this, ability to create healing and whatnot. And what it feels like and sounds like to me, you're saying is what I've really resonated with the most around all of these sorts of ideas. Using crystals is a great example, right? Or techniques, or ritualistic techniques, or healing modalities. Is this idea of what you're saying is that, look, all of that is sort of unnecessary. The root of it is you are it. It is you. It is there. It is just like, it is the reality, the base level reality that's waiting for you to drop away all the stories around it. I mean, I love how you talked about the idea of entities and things like that. It's never really resonated with me too much, because it just feels like I've always felt safe and protected, and I just haven't ever told the story otherwise. And I'm sure if I did, I would probably have some different type of experience, because right. I am the only one listening and telling the story, right? As you just said.
Precisely. And you are the healing. You become the healing. And what we tend to do when we invest in these external rituals or techniques or objects is that we're simply giving away our internal power, our internal essence, investing it in something external to later be broken, lost, or forgotten. But we always have only ourselves to come back to.
And in that, we have the opportunity to assume the observer role and be fortified, satisfied, excited about the role that we play as inspiration. Being the catalyst is an important role. To be the participant as the observer and the observed is such a rich and nourishing role. And so, sort of getting comfortable not assuming the position of, quote unquote, the conduit, that which sends itself from me to you in order for you to, be healed or find your balance, harmony, whatever it may be, allows us to be a participant. And ultimately, the students that come through our program and those that choose to go on to be practitioners, they learn this next honorary level, which is the witness, to be the witness, to be there in the presence of something so awe-inspiring, and to continue to be in that receivership role, but to be the witness for another as that interaction with this incredible intelligence and this language begins to unfold for another without judgment, without direction and control. This is such freedom. And I will say that, when I listen to people who have experienced a reconnective healing session or have come to a training program or have even explored our online portal, which is our online training, a sort of introductory course around self-healing, they purport a certain certainty in chaos, a certainty in a peace that they don't know where it came from, because nothing that they have, quote unquote, done has changed. And yet there they are in this new known, this space that is the truth of what they are. And so all of this kind of adds up to that really fundamental principle of, presence. They are carried there without even permission. Eric doesn't like when I say that. These frequencies don't ask your permission in the very literal and linear way.
Yeah, so they're not carried there without permission. They're carried there without asking your conscious permission. Right. Permission is always granted at the highest level of the intelligence of the field of the universe. So it's always with permission. It's just not with what we think of from an ego position as, well, I didn't give my permission. Well, the universe doesn't care whether that level of us gives the permission. It's given permission from a higher perspective, someone who understands this intelligence, that understands our life path, our life course, and what is most appropriate for us. When you stand in that space that Jillian just described of being truly the witness and the witnessed, you become the healing at such a level that you're no longer partial. You don't have, these frequencies from here and those frequencies from there and these frequencies from this technique and that from that approach. You simply embody the fullness and the wholeness of what healing is. So people who learn reconnective healing, whether they've learned every technique that exists or no techniques that exist, are able to facilitate all the gifts of all the techniques that have ever existed with or without training in them, just from letting go of focusing on the concept of technique itself, not any given technique, just technique itself. Technique becomes the finite focus onto something small at the expense of the rest of the picture.
It's so incredibly powerful, the synchronicity that I just realized. So you keep talking about being the witness, right? And so an old friend of mine, I actually started a Burning Man camp with years and years ago, 5-6 years ago. 7 years ago, actually, as I think about it. And I haven't talked to him in, 6 months or so. And I just received an email from him because today, as we record this, Burning Man tickets go on sale. And he sent me a login to our camp to say, hey, you can get in. Tickets are always hard to get, but because, our camp gets a certain number of access to tickets ahead of time because we're, a pretty established camp there at this point. And I haven't went in the last few years, by the way, either. Haven't talked to him in a long time, 6 months, maybe longer. And all of a sudden I just got an email from him. Hey, the sale is today. Use my login to guarantee and get your tickets. Here it is. And guess what his burner profile name is? Witness.
The field loves that. I adore when those little things happen. It's kind of like,
that's my login. If I want to do this, and as soon as we hang up here, within an hour or two of us hanging up, I've got to go and type in witness. Like that's the credentials, part of the credentials he gave me.
It's an important and pivotal little title.
Validation.
I will say that, and password.
Yes.
I think that's even better. There's your password. And again, it's a new role that I think has been perceived as sort of this passive role, and because it is such a active listening role in reconnective healing, we feel very much at the forefront of igniting this awareness.
So people think of witnesses and observers as someone who is not a participant. And yet you see...
Not the doer.
Yeah, not the doer, but they think of it as not a participant or not a doer. The point is you can't witness or observe anything without affecting it. You can observe the desk you're maybe sitting in front of without affecting the molecules. And that's simply visual observation. The truth is you and Jillian and I are although maybe we're not using our eyes, we are still in awareness or observation of one another on other levels. And we are affecting our interaction. And therefore, even though we are speaking here live and affecting one another, someone who listens to this podcast later is still interacting with the intelligence of this field, being affected by it, and their presence listening is also interacting with us. And we can say, well, how is that happening? They're listening after the fact. But this intelligence and our existence comes outside of the bounds of time and space. So there really is no such thing as the concepts we consider as past and future. Everything is happening in this moment. And therefore, healing and evolution not only affects what we consider the present, but it has roles in the future, and it does interact in what we consider to be the past. And whether you're the facilitator of the healing or whether you're the person who views yourself as the recipient or the client, everyone is affected in the interaction. Everyone.
Yeah. And there's some very...
I see that all the time.
There's some really cool practical things that happen. Often, these frequencies kind of ignite and or stimulate what on a medical level was referred to as synesthesia, something that needed to be treated because one's senses were starting to cross. So, people taste sound, they hear color.
Right.
And this is such a beautiful multidimensional kind of byproduct or I'm going to say result.
It's an expansion
indicator. It isn't really a symptom. It's an indicator of this sort of
interacting with the reconnective healing frequencies of our own evolution, of our awareness, of our multidimensional awareness.
Right. And it is something that kind of continues to unfold to greater and greater degrees. People like to have, I'm going to say, mind expanding experiences. And we always tell our students, it's like, God bless you. I'm glad you had your ayahuasca ceremony, or you had your this, or
but you don't need it.
Like this. Honestly, you haven't touched anything yet. Step on in.
Right.
And that's really, I think, an important part of it. It kind of takes away the whole idea of mind over matter. It just becomes
right. I love it. I love the concept.
And I think we're ready for that. We're ready for that as a humanity.
And to recognize it as what it is, which is really us stepping into our fuller existence here in the universe. And what happens is that medicine and psychiatry oftentimes doesn't understand it. So they will consider synesthesia as a symptom of something, meaning that it's a problem, and they will actually try to treat it, which in many cases is an attempt to reduce the awareness and the evolution of that person. So in the Reconnection, in our book, when I first spoke about it, I didn't call it synesthesia. I gave it its own word. It's transsensory, because we transcend our senses. And it's something...
Love that.
Right. It's something truly wonderful to be strived toward, not to be, medicinally or therapeutically suppressed.
Right. And it's playful. This intelligence is exceedingly playful and fun. We find the more, again, our students slide into play. Yes, they're coming for a credentialing program, and yes, they're working with others, but at the innate kind of point of entry where they're most engaged by this language, it is in their playfulness and receivership. Again, it's just a really easy thing. Now, I will point out, I just think this is worth sharing a story, a conversation I just had with a woman who her mother dragged her to a presentation because she had learned reconnective healing. And, when you learn something that has impacted your life so much, you want to tell everyone about it. And sometimes we do that unwillingly to our children. But this was a young woman whose mother dragged her, and she wasn't a child. She was in her late 20s and getting married in about 10 weeks. And her mother really wanted her to experience a presentation. And at the end of it, she came up and she tapped me on the shoulder after everyone had left and said, "Do you have a minute?" And I said, "Sure." She said, my mother's very enthusiastic, and I had a reconnective healing session last week, and she asked me to come tonight. And it's really interesting, but I'm concerned. And I said, well, what are you concerned about? She said, well, in all fairness, I have had a lifetime of what I consider to be well-managed clinical depression. And I'm a very high achiever. I work for a big company and make 6 figures. And I'm getting married in about 10 weeks. And I'm a successful person who has managed clinical depression really well. And I said, okay. And she said, since my reconnective healing session, my depression has vanished. And there's a hole there. And I can't find my identity. I can't find the familiarity of how I have managed well my daily life. And she started to tear up and well up. And I could see her searching for something that quite literally had vanished. And so this wasn't her magic moment. It was a moment of really trying to understand a new known that had appeared. And she did say, sort of at the end of our chat, she said, and my other kind of revelation here is, I think I'm experiencing love for the very first time. And, all of this, getting married in 10 weeks, listen, it brought up a lot of uncertainty in the certainty.
So I would think that it was her magic moment. It just wasn't experienced as we think of a magic moment as being experienced. People say with reconnective healing, they often set out to have a certain result. And I say, my suggestion is that you allow yourself to receive the healing in whatever form it comes. If you're lucky, your healing will come in the form that you want it to. But if you're truly fortunate, your healing will come in a form you haven't even dreamed of, one that the universe has designed specifically and uniquely for you.
Right. Yeah, that's, it's also a little bit synchronistic for me because I have just in the last few days really started on my own healing journey. I've noticed over the last few years, it's not a major issue, but it's something that's sort of gotten progressively just a little bit worse over the last few years, which is like redness under my eyes or on my forehead. And I think it's like eczema or something, rosacea, something like that. And so I've literally in the last few days just started, okay, I've looking at things online. What do people do? And a lot of it comes back to, cleaning up your diet, getting really clean with your diet. And it's sort of like toxins, leaving through the skin kind of thing. So I'm curious, what types of healing, is it everything from skin issues to major, super, severe issues? What types of healings are we talking about?
It's a really good question. So let me preface the answer by saying reconnective healing in all ways is for everything because it is about, at its very core, life progress. It's about our forward movement on our life continuum. And after interacting with the reconnective healing frequency, we often find that we've dramatically progressed on this life path of ours. So it manifests in matter, meaning we see extraordinary physical healing. And, we can talk at length about the physical transformations that we witness every day. And yet you have to understand there isn't any focus on a particular symptom, because this interaction is happening at the level where it's not looking at the symptom, it's looking at the entirety of one's wholeness. So this is important. Health, balance, inner peace, love, all of the components that we may think of as just being sort of our general kind of stride in life to be complete. This intelligence is only entering that point of engagement from that kind of awareness perspective, not the experience we may be having with cancer, or the experience we may be having with, like you said, a skin issue or diabetes. So therefore, it isn't limited by, and the healing isn't limited by the manifestation of something larger that kind of cultivated this one symptom. Because treating one symptom may ultimately just, inspire another particular symptom. And
with
this
the
is
reconnected
really
healing frequencies, we can't focus it to just treat one symptom anyway.
Because it isn't a treatment.
Gotcha.
Right.
However, I will point out, just as another caveat, that often things that we see with just simple sessions that have to do with skin disorders, autoimmune-based things seem to be kind of no-brainers.
Very highly responsive and fairly immediately. The thing is that that can confuse us into thinking that we're treating something. For example, for people who go on to Google or the internet or go on to our YouTube or our website, you'll see endless videos where I'll often bring someone up from the audience. And it won't even be, it used to be I would facilitate these healings. Now we bring someone up from the audience, show them how to facilitate the healing for someone else in the audience. And we'll bring up someone who's unable to raise their arms, maybe unable to raise their arms past parallel even to the ground, yet nowhere near above their ears or their head. And we'll demonstrate a healing. And then oftentimes they have full range of motion. Now, the mistake that a lot of people in the audience make, and I understand this mistake, is that they say, oh, you said you don't use reconnected healing to treat anything, but you saw the guy had a problem with their arms and you treated the problem with the arms. And then even though they couldn't raise their arms up over their head after they were hit by a bus 20 years ago and had 63 surgeries, suddenly they've got full range of motion and no pain. So you treated that. And actually, that's not what happened. When you learn how to access the reconnective healing frequencies, you must have the consciousness with it. The frequencies come as an award for presence, a reward for your presence and your awareness, your consciousness of the fact that the frequencies will, well, they know where to go. They know what to do. They're going to do what they want to do. They don't care whether the other person believes in it or not, or whether they think they're open, or whether they're wearing the right color crystal for that day of the week or anything else. The frequencies know where to go and what to do, and they do. And what they do is they return and restore balance and even bring it beyond, in many cases where it has been, in that other person, and it manifests the way that's most appropriate. So we don't direct the frequencies to the arm of the person or to the liver if they have a liver problem, the kidney. And they say, well, why do you often bring up someone who has a range of motion problem in their arms? I say, because if I brought someone up who had a pancreatic problem, what are you going to see? You're not going to see anything, but the arms you're going to see. So we let you see, but we also want to bring this higher awareness of, let's get out of the way of thinking that we know so much that is for us to tell the universe what to do and how to do it. Maybe it's time for us to realize that our greatest rewards, our own, comes also from allowing ourselves to witness and observe.
All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. What's fascinating, I notice, is that you've definitely caught the attention of a lot of people. You've been on quite a few TV shows, and people like Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer, have talked about this, reconnective healing, and so it's not like this is something that you're doing in your basement. And I mean, you've really gotten the word out there, and it seems to be, I imagine you have a lot of good stories that you could share.
Listen, when I started teaching this, I was in a few basements, let me tell you. As a matter of fact, I remember one place I went to, we were teaching this in the basement of a nice upper middle class home in a residential development somewhere in New Jersey. And the home was owned by a pharmacist who didn't want people to know about it. We were in the basement underground where there was mildew coming, and they had to have fans sucking out the mildew with 45 people teaching them how to do this.
Wow.
It felt as if we were in the equivalent of a speakeasy, when liquor was outlawed, they're waiting for the police to come break in.
We are in often, 15 countries a year. And so the stories are endless. They really are. Eric, what's your most recent favorite story?
My God, how can you ask me that? My favorite stories are, almost always the most recent ones. Trigger a memory in my mind.
Right.
I love children. To me, I love doing healings with children because they come in without a sense of entitlement. They come in without a sense of limitation, without thinking that you should stand closer to them or further away, without thinking that, we should shake off negative energy, without fears. And so what I like to do with children oftentimes is when we do a public presentation and we bring someone up with a problem, I'll look for someone in the audience who might be 6, 7, 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
And work with them, because an adult will sometimes come up and think something's not possible, and the child will walk right into the situation. And the adult who has the problem, who's doctors and x-rays and MRIs and everything else has confirmed that they're unable to move an arm or a leg or hear out of an ear, will look at that child like, oh, I'm just going to humor the child. And suddenly, when the healing takes place in front of the audience in a matter of seemingly seconds, moments, everyone is in shock except for the child, who takes it in absolute perfect calm stride, smile on his or her face, little bit proud and happy and strolls off the stage as if nothing has ever happened.
And is on to the next thing. We had a presentation in Denver recently, and you know, sometimes when there's a large group, we kind of open up with a moment of letting people just give us their expression of what is healing, because healing is a really loaded word. And for a lot of people, it just means a return from some physical issue, getting better from something. So we asked the question, just we're kind of waiting because adults tend to have to go into thinking and then trying to figure out what's the best answer to the question. And all of a sudden,
a little bit of judgment, you know, how can I bring a better answer than anyone else will ever be able to do?
Right. And all of a sudden I see way in the back of the room, this hand. And I'm like, okay, first hand up, and I can't see the person, but I see the hand. And so I'm like, okay, in the back. All of a sudden, this little woman who has had to stand on her chair is the hand. She stands up, and I'm looking, and I have a big smile on my face, and I say, okay, so what is healing? And meanwhile, the adults are still thinking, but at that minute, they all turn around to look to see this, what couldn't have been more than a 5 or 6-year-old child, little woman standing in a chair. And she says in the loudest, clearest voice, healing is silence. It was just a remarkable moment. And yeah.
Wow. And the room went silent as the room had its own healing of awareness right there in that moment.
Healing is silence. And, you know, it was beautifully profound because we then sort of went on to sort of practice exercises where we show in silence where so much information is being exchanged. But yet this was innate. And so, you know, I always say if our students leave our training program knowing one thing only, they have understood that they can exist in their everyday life knowing that they can see themselves in another and another in themselves. This happens no matter what. No one leaves without that innate gift. And I think this is another part of kind of our evolutionary leap in this moment. You know, it's wonderful that there are great documentaries coming out that we're living in a connected universe. It's wonderful that we're showing that, yes, you know, ultimately we are a part of a memory system where time is an illusion and we are all, you know, one. But to be in the mental understanding that we are one and to cognitively Om or Namaste our way around daily life, unfortunately, does not mean that we have experienced the beingness of seeing ourselves in another and another in ourselves. That this is a actual interaction. And so I know that our students leave with that gift. I know that this intelligence imparts that gift without any doubt.
There are many, many, many stories shared by our students and shared by our teaching assistants. The funny thing is, and you know, I'm using this analogy for the first time right now because it just came to me this way. So many things and so many dramatic transformations physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, life progress, as Jillian spoke about, take place, and they're all so impactful, and yet there are so many. But the funny thing that came to me is they say everyone remembers their first kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't thought about this for a while, and I don't usually talk about it because it's the story is in the first book that I wrote, but I want to point out that I had a gift given to me, which was being able to see and witness in such clarity the first of what we'll call the reconnective healings that came about, at least the first one facilitated by me. And we hear so many stories from our teaching assistants and students of their first and second and third healings while they're all really fresh. And mine was that this person, Gary, who was about, 25 years old at the time, came to my office for chiropractic care. And he came in because when he was born, I believe that the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck and he was oxygen deprived. And something came about where it caused I believe it was his right leg to be about 4 inches shorter than his left because it brought his right hip up 4 inches higher than his left. It deformed his spine. He was on a lot of pain pills for pain. He tried all different kinds of therapy. He actually ended up coming to me. He was referred by a Pilates teacher he was going to for back pain because he had become so addicted to his meds that he was trying to come off of them. And he brought in his x-rays and everything else. And I brought him in. I did the examination for him. And I gave him a chiropractic adjustment, just one bone in his neck. He came in for that. And I wanted to see how letting go of that would relax his body. And that was what he came for. And I gave him what he came for and told him to come back in about 24 hours. And I check him. So he came back the next day, and I had him lie down on the chiropractic table. Now, the funny thing was when he walked, when he stood up, his legs wouldn't separate. His right foot was rotated in, so when he was standing, it was as if he had one leg. His right foot was resting on top of his left foot, and he would have to kick it out, swing it out and around. It would go in a half circle around and land back in front of him where his other foot would jump forward. It was like watching each step seemed like a leap or an intentional jump. Well, right. I thought if I had him lie down on his back, I could look at his feet and his legs better, and his feet would just naturally, from gravity, separate. The left would fall off to the left, the right would fall off to the right, just like the rest of ours, but it didn't happen that way. Even lying down, the way the bones had changed, his right leg was still twisted and resting on his left foot. It wouldn't separate, wouldn't move. So, especially because he didn't have the weight. He wasn't standing to be able to jump, kick it around in that half circle. So I held my hands. I told him to relax and close his eyes. I held my hands by his head, and I saw his eyes start to dart back and forth rapidly. And the funny thing was that I saw a little bit of what looked like movement in his feet. So I went down to his feet, and I held my hands out in front of me. So my palms of my hands were sort of facing the soles of his feet. And I watched as his right foot began to sort of pump up and down the way your foot would move if you were sort of pumping the accelerator in a car. It would pump up and down. And as it was doing that, it started to rotate outward to the right and come back, outward and come back. And it would rest back on his left foot again. So I walked around by the side of him. I held my hands near him again. His foot started that same pumping motion, and it went out to the right and in, and out to the right and in, and to the right. And it stayed there. So we waited and waited and waited. Nothing happened. His feet stayed in that separated position. So I said, Gary, I think we're finished now. And Gary stood up for the first time. He was 26. For the first time in his 26 years, 6 foot tall, tears coming down his eyes, with 2 independent legs. He drove home that night.
Wow.
He had to drive over the hill in Los Angeles to get into the valley where he lived. By the time he got to the top of the hill, he had to pull over. He was crying so hard he couldn't see. And you know what?
Wow.
That healing stayed his. He still walked with a slight limp, a slight, almost indetectable limp. But that healing wasn't just his. That was mine in recognizing the potential of this work. And from there on, there was nothing that was going to interfere with me sharing this gift.
Wow. That is absolutely a remarkable story. Incredible. Is there people sometimes who regress, will have a healing, and then you'd said that healing stayed with him? Is there people who sometimes regress?
Almost never.
Over time?
I will give you an almost, but almost never. The funny thing about reconnective healing is, again, it tends to happen in a moment, and it tends to be lifelong. And the scientific theory behind that is that reconnective healing doesn't happen instantaneously. That's a word that we would want to use, but if you really look at it, an instant is a moment of time, and it seems to happen outside of the constraints of time. So immediately is a more appropriate way of languaging that. And, time often allows for degeneration, but with reconnective healing, it doesn't seem to be ruled by the dictates of time either, which is probably why the healings tend to be lifelong. I've seen a few where the person has let go of the healing for one reason or another that was, I guess, appropriate for them at the level of the path that they were on at that time. The story, the first one that I saw this in was a woman who, interestingly enough, because we're in Germany, it was a German woman, but in the U.S., who came into my office in a wheelchair. And she had been in a wheelchair. I forget the cause of it, but for, years, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. And after the reconnective healing session, she was able to walk. Now, I wouldn't say that she could skip. She had to periodically hold onto the wall in the beginning just to catch her balance if she would start to tip. But she walked out, no wheelchair. She was very excited to come back for her second session. She had scheduled 3 sessions. We often recommend 1, 2, or 3 sessions. Not that it takes 1, 2, or 3 sessions for the healing to happen, but sometimes it takes 1, 2, or 3 sessions for us, with our human concepts of limitations and what we allow ourselves to decide that we will accept that healing. Well, she came back and she was in the wheelchair. Why was she in the wheelchair? She got home. She was so proud of the healing that she had. She shared it with her husband. Her husband decided to share something with her. He shared with her that he had been in a relationship, having an affair with someone who he truly loved for the last 8 years, and he was only staying with her because she needed him because she was in that wheelchair. And now that she was out of it, he was able to leave her. And, she came back and she didn't want to come back in for her second session, but she did. She had her second session. She did not get up out of that wheelchair after her second, I don't remember if she had a third session or not. But we have to realize that there was an investment in that. There was an investment in that. There was a group of people in New York one time who had severe deforming rheumatoid arthritis, where their ankles were so swollen, their feet were so deformed, it looked like elephant feet. Their elbows didn't look normal, their hands. And they had asked a group of them, about 16 or so of them, if I would come out and work with them, if they would fly me out to New York. And I said, sure. But of course, the only time I could go that was nearest to when they called me was around Thanksgiving time, because I was able to close my chiropractic office for a little bit, and create a vacation around that. Well, I wasn't realizing that winter around Thanksgiving time is really the worst time for people with rheumatoid arthritis to be outside, in the snow and the sleet and the cold. But, I took a hotel room and they came to me and I had them schedule about 3 sessions. And the first day, almost everyone came. And no one, not one of them, had anywhere near the healing results that I had been seeing up until then. And I thought, what am I doing? Am I doing something wrong? Well, the second appointments, many of them canceled, and some of them came, and virtually no response. And the third set of appointments for them, almost none of them came. So, of course, I took this all very personally, which was another topic of discussion, was an indicator to me later on and looking back that I was busy taking credit for the healing. So I felt guilty for what didn't happen when credit nor responsibility was mine. But that was part of my lesson that they taught me. I got back to LA feeling, what is wrong? So my first thought was, reconnective healing doesn't work maybe on severe deforming rheumatoid arthritis. Then I found out that this group all had something in common. They had all had silicone implants, and they felt that that's what caused their arthritis. So I thought, okay, reconnective healing doesn't work on rheumatoid arthritis, severe deforming rheumatoid arthritis caused by implants. And then I got the biggest piece of news. They were all involved in a class lawsuit. In other words, the more things they showed that they tried that didn't work, the bigger their financial anticipated windfall would be from the lawsuit. So they were financially invested in not getting well. But just the same logically, I could understand that. But emotionally, logic is no opponent for emotion. So emotionally, I had taken that personally and became very fear-based around rheumatoid arthritis, and I didn't want to work with it. And one day I was at Jackson Memorial Hospital at the University of Miami giving a presentation to all their doctors and nurses and their medical staff. And it was like a room the size of like a huge auditorium that you would play basketball in a university. And everyone was lined up in the bleachers. And I said, well, you know what? We're going to let someone feel this. Who would like to feel this? And all of a sudden, from the top bleacher in the back, this woman jumped up and she said, I'd like to feel it. And I see this huge red hands, giant swollen knuckles. She goes, I have. And time stopped for me. I mean, it sounded like what she said was, I have rheumatoid arthritis. Time was going so slowly. And inside of me, I was screaming, no. But there she came, bounding down with her hand in the air. Everyone knew her. She was a nurse practitioner, been at the hospital for like 11 years or something. A nurse practitioner is considered the highest level of nursing, pretty much equivalent to a medical doctor. And she came up and I said, all right, we're just going to play. This is not a healing because I know everyone's expecting healing. I'm just going to let you feel these frequencies. We're not really doing healing. You're just feeling. We're not doing healing, but there was no way to worm out.
Disclaimer.
Right. I knew what everyone expected. So I held my hand near hers, and like the elevator story we told you, her fingers started to move and she went, oh, I can move my hands. Oh, and she could suddenly open and close her hands. Oh, the pain is gone. It was phenomenal yet unexpected. I showed up at the hospital to give another presentation a year later, and she was one of the first people who greeted me. Even the swelling had left at that point. And what I learned from that is that the limitations and the healings that we are able to accept, receive, or facilitate even for others has to do with our own emotional buy-ins of what is or isn't possible. What we believe at that moment becomes our constraints. And as facilitators, it's really in everyone's highest benefit to pay little or no attention to the diagnosis, the supposed problem, the limitations, the x-rays, whether they had pins in their spine or their shoulders, but to let go of what all the perceived problems or facts on the ground appear to be. And in doing that, things that seem impossible, they've had surgical pins limiting their range of motion, suddenly just release. Every time? No. 100% of the time? No. But so significantly in amount and in degree that you just know that something real is happening. And this has a lot to do, I believe, with why science is investing so much time and money in studying reconnective healing.
Right. Wow. So you said a lot of time and money is being spent. Are you referring to like the university studies that you referenced earlier at Arizona?
University studies or research by doctors William Tiller, you could say, Gary Schwartz, and Baldwin, Glenn Ryan from New York, Konstantin Korotkov from the main university at St. Petersburg in Russia, who works with all the Olympic students, and many people.
About 30% of our students are mainstream medical practitioners coming to learn reconnective healing. And part of it is, and that's ever growing, it's beautiful to see the deconstruction of, and some of the limitations.
That's incredible, 30%.
Yeah. And part of that is, I think generally, there's a lot out there where science ultimately confirms one thing one day, and that confirmation dissipates into a non-confirmation the next, And so there's so much. I mean, most recently, it's amazing, this whole myth of the little baby aspirin that, our parents and our grandparents truly, obediently subscribed to ensure that their blood pressure would stay at, whatever level.
And now we know.
And
it's actually potentially shortening their lives and creating more health risks than it was ever preventing.
So in some ways, I love when medical practitioners come to learn reconnective healing, because one of the first things that they are schooled in is when they meet with their patients, they will say very transparently, normally you come to me for me to tell you what you're going to receive. We take your blood pressure, we look at your weight, your height, we explore through these particular ways that you're familiar with what is needed, and I determine how that's administered. I'd like to share something with you where I don't determine what you receive. And there is a freedom in watching something greater than we can conceive with our very limited human educated mind unfold. And because there are no risks, people don't get worse from reconnective healing. There are no side effects. And, in this day and age, that's quite an interesting paradigm for a medical professional to be able to claim. No side effects.
There are no adverse side effects whatsoever. The worst thing that could happen is nothing. And the best thing that could happen is absolutely everything. But, sometimes people, before they attend a training program, come in and they say that, well, I don't know, I've never done any healing before. And really having a background of not being involved in the healing is the easiest, because there's the least amount of illusions and belief systems that we need to let go of. And yet many people come in from, who are medical doctors, and people sitting near them go, oh, they're going to do it better because they're a medical doctor. And it's absolutely not true. It doesn't matter whether you're a bus driver or a housewife or a teacher in the school system or a banker or a politician. It just matters only our willingness to let go, witness, observe, participate, be present, and really listen with a different sense. Receive. Listening is receiving.
Most recently, with the head of the Chicago Police Department.
Wow.
We loved that. So we have a very diverse humanity coming to explore reconnective healing. But back to your research.
But it's not a good idea to wear that police uniform when you're doing your healing sessions, possibly. You better get well or else.
Yeah. So lots of new proposed protocols and studies for a series of different things, some health-based, some life progress-based. It's really, there's a big spectrum of exploration in the research that we're embarking on right now.
And I believe very strongly, I know that humanity is standing right now on the precipice of our next level of evolution. And I'll go as far as to say that I believe that we are being observed. I know that, we didn't even get into some of these stories about the multidimensional existence of what's going on and how they've been communicating.
I'd love to hear some.
Well, you'll have to have another show on that one because we've got it. There's a book out called Solomon Speaks on Reconnecting Your Life that will go into a lot of detail where there was a period of time for 3 months or so where over 50 of my patients, when I held my hands near them, lost consciousness and spoke 6 verbatim phrases. And then it stopped coming through those 50 people, but continued coming through the main person. And we've taken those notes. I held onto them. We held onto them for about 20 years or so,
right,
until we transcribed them into a book.
Published by Hay House called Solomon Speaks.
Solomon Speaks on Reconnecting Your Life. You can get either of the books on Amazon. But you can get another book on Amazon called Science Confirms Reconnective Healing. The English is a little broken because it was written by an important scientific researcher who was Russian,
Konstantin
Korotkov, who, as I said, he works with the Russian Olympic teams. But anyway, the point I'm saying is I believe that humanity right now is consciously being observed by life existing on many different planes and dimensions. And we are being observed at this point in time because it is the time of being on this precipice of the next level of human evolution as to who we are as multidimensional beings. I believe that reconnective healing has been introduced at this time because it is a key to our own transformation. What we allow ourselves to receive, and our own transformation continues to unfold in how we choose to share this with others.
Human Bluetooth, baby.
Yes, indeed. It definitely, it appears to be so. And, doing this show, one of the great things about it is getting to connect with so many amazing people like yourself from different perspectives and walks of lives. And it's all, there's so many amazing souls that are having these human Bluetooth, various types of human Bluetooth types of multidimensional connectivity. And it's just, it's so fascinating to see unfold. And, I certainly, it appears that it's only going to pick up pace as we sort of collectively ascend into the next version of ourselves, of humanity.
It is. We're teaching, we're sharing here in Germany right now. We will be teaching in Palm Springs, April 5 through 7 is that our only U.S. program for this year that we've scheduled?
And again in December. But Palm Springs is an interesting event because it's a one experience event at the Riviera. And we're
what is the one experience?
Yeah, that is a beautiful opportunity to begin the online excursion called the Portal, and then join like-minded others in Palm Springs for the 3-day intensive and certification program. And it's just a special one because many of our alumni are going to be attending simultaneously. And so we've brought all these extra kind of keynote sessions and breakout kind of funness, reconnective healing, yoga, and reconnective healing with animals. And there's just going to be kind of a Lollapalooza of different things happening simultaneously alongside the Catalyst program. So we're excited for that program.
For the new students attending, it's the one program. The one program, includes the live online course and then that live immersion that we're giving there, but for some people, they might just want to start off with the live online course. And, all of that it's all on, our website, thereconnection.com.
Yeah. And actually we're going to put together, I know Jillian, we spoke at the beginning about putting together a little something special for them, the Positive Head listeners, which I always very politely push my guests to do if they're willing, and you were gracious enough to do that. And so for any of you who are interested in Palm Springs, that's very close to where I'm at in Southern California. And Christopher, our mutual friend who's working with you guys, has already sort of prompted me and suggested that I come. And now after connecting with you here, I definitely am interested. So there's a good chance I'll actually be out there in April in Palm Springs. So any of you guys who want to come out,
be there too, of course.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Welcome. It was wonderful, Brandon. Really, we think that this would be just super to have you hang out with us and be a part of that. But we will put
and
a special little package for the Positive Head listeners. You have such a progressive show that is so well attended, and I have to say we're impressed by your program and your listenership. Curious seekers exposing themselves to a multitude of different life-affirming opportunities. And so,
which is much better than just exposing themselves, but that'll be another program.
Exactly. So for you guys who want to go and, connect with, either the live event or the online, opportunities to continue going down this path of reconnection, just go to positivehead.com/reconnection, and that'll take you to all the things. And I really appreciate you guys putting together something special for the listeners. I know they appreciate it, and this has been absolutely fabulous.
Well, we've loved sharing this time with you, every moment of it.
Likewise. I do have.
Yeah, we'll get into the let's do it again. We'll get into the Solomon Speaks part.
I would really like that, because those sorts of stories fascinate me. So yeah, let's certainly connect again. It's not too frequently that I'll say, let's just book someone again. But in this case, I love the idea of doing that with you guys. You're so much fun. And, I do have one last question, though, I would like to leave you both with. And that question is this, and I'll let you answer independently. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Eric Pearl? What is the meaning of life according to Jillian Fleer?
Well, the meaning of life for me is love. And I don't mean feeling love. I mean being love itself.
Yes.
That is the meaning of life for me.
I love that.
Well, to quote the famous line from WKRP in Cincinnati, when Lonnie Anderson was asked what the meaning of life was, her response was, the magazine or the cereal? The meaning of life.
I love that.
That's so Eric Pearl.
Yeah. The meaning of life, to me, great question. To me, the meaning of life is to grow and explore and experience in yet another realm, another dimension.
Mm. Mm. Well, you are certainly helping a lot of people to do that. And to love, the reason behind it all.
Love is the overriding thing. Of course, the meaning of my life is to love Jillian.
Oh, there we go. See, now you've really heard the meaning. That's so sweet.
We finally got to the root of it all, and there is a lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to connect. This has been absolutely epic, and until we meet in 3D, which hopefully will happen here in a few weeks, journey well.
Oh yeah, and Brandon, I think another cool thing will be after you kind of come and immerse yourself and we get to play together. I think being able to kind of talk about your experience after you return from Palm Springs will also be a great bridge to bring some of the Solomon Speak things in. Because we do touch on that, and you'll be able to touch on that a little bit deeper as well in the online before you even come. So can't wait to meet you in person.
Yes, so fun. And once again, guys, it's positivehead.com/reconnection. Any of you want to get involved with the live event or the online workshop. So thank you.
Hang out with you.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Well, yeah, this is epic. We're actually working on, some retreat stuff that we're going to be doing. I'm going to be doing for the first time in 4 years of doing this show. People have been asking me to do a retreat for years and years and years. And I'm moving into a big property in Venice in June and going to have people come through. And who knows, maybe what I learn there will be part of what we share during those retreats, right? That would be epic because there's going to be new guests every week.
We're doing a retreat in Bosnia, and we have a retreat coming up in Costa Rica. So maybe we'll visit you on yours.
Yeah, that would be so amazing. Absolutely. Well, thank you both again so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. Before we sign off, I wanted to let you all know that we have finally created the Game with the Universe on our website, where you can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time by doing this manually. But now if you go to positivehead.com/YO universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and grandest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to engage and invite friends, family, people on social media to check out the podcast as well. So be sure to check out positivehead.com/YOUNIVERSE and be sure to tell all your friends so they can play a game with the universe, which also helps the show to reach new people, which I greatly appreciate. And as a quick reminder, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them every day. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I can't stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so, and I'm sincerely excited to share it with all of you. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.